Hello. So I'm doing a quick prosthetic sculpt this time. I am using a full head bust because I have to do a headpiece for it because I'm doing Frankenstein. So I got to figure out a good spot for the camera, but I now have a much nicer camera with much better detail that will allow you guys to see the sculpts better. So I will set that down here for now while I just open the clay up and get some stuff going on. Okay. This is going to be a little bit of experimentation of me finding angles and stuff with the new movable camera. But it's much higher definition.
Yes, sir.
And a much better camera that I have. Hi, everybody who is joining me live. I appreciate it.
Okay.
And my camera has quite a cord, so hopefully that there is good enough.
Yeah. Yeah.
All right. So if you guys can give me a heads up, I keep looking at my computer. You guys can give me a heads up if the camera goes a little wonky or something. I can hear definitely Jason. But just give me a heads up if
Yeah.
off and I don't notice.
Yeah, they might.
Okay, I actually just had to mute Jason. A little bit too much going on there for a recordable video. So here we go. Once again, I'm still kind of trying to learn this camera. So hopefully that's not too weird. All right, but here's my my sculpt. This is one of my actors, Ian, and I'm going to go ahead and start doing a Frankenstein sculpt. The first thing I'll do is I'll put some clay here up on top of the head because I'm going for that classic Frankenstein with that squared off top of his head. I think that's a fun look. Ian wants to try doing the role. He's been playing Frankenstein for me. He wants to try doing the role with prosthetics. I think the mask that he is in looks pretty awesome, but he works fairly hard, so I will attempt to make him happy. And I have to kind of work on the headpiece and have it integrate with the hair that he already has. So there'll be kind of a cap piece that glues onto his forehead, but then it's just going to sit along the hairlines. So that it's just going to sit along the hairline. There's a lot of noise going on for background, so I have to mute. All right. And I'm not able to monitor my stuff because I'm kind of sculpting and my hands are icky. So if you have a question or if someone on here can monitor questions on the YouTube page or on the Google event page, that'd be great. It takes very little clay to get that squared off head. Very little. So it doesn't take much at all for me to get to that point. And now I want to build up definitely the brow. Frankenstein has this awesome brow. Got to take off the wedding ring, put it in the pocket, because when I roll clay up, it tends to mess it up. I actually had a comment that because they see me take off my wedding ring fairly early in the sculpt, that as more people show up viewing it on YouTube, I take off my wedding ring so girls don't know I'm married. That's not true. I take off my wedding ring so I don't mess up my sculpture. Other than that, I pretty much always have my ring on. So, can you guys hear me pretty well? I have no idea the capabilities of the microphone on this.
Yeah, I can hear you just fine.
Awesome. Yeah, this is a new camera. Obviously, it's HD. It's a little bit nicer quality. Um, it's a much nicer camera. The other one was the one that came with the laptop. And since I'm doing a lot of these, and I like them, and some others like them, I might as well invest. Ian has a very oval head, so I have to kind of work around that because Frankenstein obviously has a very square head. I'm going to start off very heavy on my cheekbones here and pull them down. Frankenstein is such a interesting character to sculpt because he has to look just a little bit corpse-like, but he also has to convey a lot of strength. And those two things just don't go well together very often. So you have to kind of fudge anatomy with Frankenstein in order to get a character that meets the needs of looking strong and of looking like it's made of dead bodies. You know, if you ever try to sew dead bodies together, it's not a very stable thing, and it's not very strong. It doesn't look strong. It doesn't feel strong. It's kind of floppy, and you have to beat all that in order to do a good Frankenstein makeup. And I do want, this is a very dry bust, so I'm just wetting my bust down so it gets a little hungry. As it sucks the water in, that'll help the clay attach to it also. And this will be a little bit different than normal prosthetic because I will have this headpiece that I'm going to try and attach to it and make it one piece, which means it'll be a two-piece mold. Most prosthetic molds are one piece, face only, but this will be a two-piece mold with a weird dividing line kind of in the middle of the face. I think that's my current plan. I always have the right to change that if the sculpt tells me to do something differently. And with foam, if I were doing this in silicone, thickness wouldn't matter. I could do a real thin piece, and I can just make sure that the silicone is thin enough where it's going to flow there. Foam latex it'll go in that spot, and then the bubbles and the gas that it makes will make it leave that area. So you'll get these little voids and vacuums. I did one sculpt where it's just too thin, and we don't get good pulls out of that because the sculpt is so thin. The upside of a thin sculpt is that you end up with a piece that's very actor-friendly, I guess. It really moves with their face, and they're not fighting through a ton of foam in order to get a performance out. But the downside is that sometimes they don't turn out that well. And I lost the balance war on that one, I'm afraid. Nose is kind of the center of the face. It's very important. It's not that big of a deal for Frankenstein. Bernie Wrightson's Frankenstein has no nose, and that's a very successful design. I need to have a nose on here because it has to tie in all the other pieces of this sculpt. And there's a lot going on in Frankenstein. You've got the head, obviously, but you also have, I have to fix the jaw. There's just a lot to do when you turn a person into Frankenstein. I got to have those sunken cheekbones and then this strong jaw in order to get the strength and the corpse-like qualities. And I'm just yakking away. So I'm probably going to turn some people's mics back on just so I can have some interaction with some other folks here.
Yeah, I've been keeping a lookout for YouTube comments and questions.
We don't have a lot of viewers on YouTube right now, but normally they come in a little bit later.
All right. I don't have the Google Plus information, so I can't check those.
Okay. All right, so here's where I'm at right now. And the Ian that you guys see joining me is the one who's going to be wearing this prosthetic.
Hooray.
And so he has some interest in this one. And I don't want to make you guys seasick, but I do want to make sure that you guys are able to kind of really see the sculpture and see what's going on. It's a little tougher, I think, acting through a prosthetic, because in the back of your head, you're worried about edges showing. You're worried about, if I move my face too much, will it pull up? And in a mask, the outside of it pretty much always looks the same. So all you have to really work on is doing crazy eyes, so that your eyes show up through the mask, and then you're in pretty good shape. The great thing about a Frankenstein prosthetic is I can leave a thick edge on it and make it look like it's stitched there, and that, kind of sells it. So we'll be able to get several uses out of this prosthetic just because it is Frankenstein. And I mentioned a second ago a strong jaw. I'm doing that by putting on a nice jawbone. And what that jawbone does, this is the one here. What that jawbone is going to do, and it's real heavy right now, but as I tone it down, it'll give me a straight line here, which is a very strong jaw. And also, angles are scary. If this were really round here, that's not going to be as scary. The character would not look as strong. They'd be cherubic, which is one of the last things that your Frankenstein should be. Look at that awesomely cherubic Frankenstein, said no one ever. So, and I'm going to be doing a lot of wetting on this and smoothing, because that's just a great way to look at what I have. I actually wish my clay, I'm using water-based clay. You normally don't do that for prosthetics, but I know I'm going to sculpt this very quickly, and I'm going to mold it very quickly. And I'm going to leave my edges thick up until I'm right about to mold it, and then I'll smear them down so that they get really thin. But I do need to get this guy sculpted fast. And I'd probably use water-based anyway, just because I like it a lot more. And it'll take some good, fast detail. Now I have my phone over here for visual references, so I'll be using that. I wish my clay were a little bit of a different color. It's going to blend into this bust really easy, and I have to make sure that I have a good thickness everywhere. So that's going to be one of my tricks, is making sure that it stays thick enough. But one thing I can do is when I put all these little dots of clay on, it's a lot thinner than normal if I'm doing a mask, but it'll be thick enough for a prosthetic. And Frankenstein, I don't want a nice even texture. I want a texture that's a little rough. Frankenstein is not going to have the best skin in the world. I don't think he'll get skin conditions. I don't see him breaking out into a rash, but I do see some pitted skin. If he was made from criminals, then he's probably made from bodies that didn't take care of themselves much in the first place. I can do fun stuff like have one area be really acne scarred and the other side not at all because they're from two different people. That's kind of neat stuff. And I think that the reason his head is square is because of how much the brain would swell, and they had to make room for the brain swelling. I think that's something that I remember from a book, which is one of the ways they justified it. I'm kind of in a classic monster mood. A, because it's Halloween, I'm doing a classic monster haunt. B, because I just watched Dracula, The Legend Untold, or The Story Untold, or Dracula Untold, something like that. And I thought it was great. It was a lot of fun. It was a decent action-y, monster-y movie. I got everything I expected out of it. So, good for it.
Cool, yeah, I was wondering how that movie was.
It was pretty good. It was nice. I liked it. I think I'm going to let the ears be natural ears. I can see where they are here under the head form. I have a big old bucket of water over there on my side. I can
Yeah,
brush.
but by the way, if you needed me to get a haircut or something for this to work better, that can happen. Because I know I have longer hair than Frankenstein typically would.
I think we'll have to just slick your hair back with mud, and I don't think that we have to go that drastic.
That works too.
And I think you guys are still going to have a little bit of, hey, I'm doing this side, and you're staring at the other. I guess I could move this camera around. It's probably worth it, huh? So I have to catch this side now up. And it looks like it's the same as the other, but this really isn't clay. That's the bust. It's a little bit here, but all that is just the bust. So got to take little wads of clay and make this a little more. Once again, I'm not super worried about edges. Number one, it's a haunted house. Number two, it's Frankenstein. I'll put stitches along every edge that I can finish with the airbrush, you know, kind of do the other half of the stitch. And that way, all of my edges are stitch lines. And now the camera is, of course, on top of the thing of clay. I have a little gorilla pod in my office that I will bring for this next time, so I can easily move it from one side to the other. Now this brow will get calmed down some, but I do want to start with a good strong brow and keep it strong, just not noxious. And all right here is still all the actor. And I think I'll leave it that way. I think I'm going to come right down here and leave that as the actor's skin right there. That way I know it's going to have good movement around the mouth because it's the actor's mouth. Now this prosthetic is being made on Ian's life cast. Does that mean that no one else can wear it? No, it doesn't mean that. What it means is it'll fit Ian really well and everybody else not as well. The closer the basic head shape, the better. But it's going to be foam. It's going to be flexible and a little stretchy. So you are able to use prosthetics on different people, but it is difficult. It's going to be difficult to make it line up just right. The difference between Ian's mouth and Ian's eye line is going to be different than any other actor. So you kind of have to, if multiple actors were playing this, then I would get 2 or 3 different size head casts. I'd get 2 or 3 different size head casts, and I would make sure that I made a Frankenstein for each one, so whatever the actor was, I'd have one about that size. One of the tricks that I use when I'm doing prosthetics is I put a ridge in the makeup around the eyes so that I don't necessarily have to blend that right up there under their eyes. There's like an eye bag or something that does the work. You know, that line is supposed to be there, so it stays a little bit off of the eye. Now, Frankenstein, one of the looks of classic Frankenstein is those really heavy lids. And I'm going to try to do that, but I've also got to do a line on there where I can cut that piece off if it bothers the actor too much. Because, you know, having something brushing your eye every time you blink is a pain in the butt. But to look like Frankenstein, that's what has to happen. So I'll move the camera around. That is a bit of a front-on view. I've got to tone the cheekbones down, of course. I got to tone down the brow, but I'm getting my basic forms and shapes in. So, here we go. All right, I was doing the top of the eyelids. Pretty important for Frankenstein. One shape, I'm going to cut it in half. Now I have two of the same size pieces, and I'm just going above the eyelid, blending into that brow ridge. That'll give me that heavy brow look, hopefully while staying off of the actor's actual eyelid. Don't want to glue that down for sure. I'm just going to use a little metal spatula tool and trim that up so I think that the eyelid can come all the way up and not mess with it. You can also use this tool to get a bit of clay on and put it into holes and then pull it and leave that bit of clay in that hole as a filler. And I don't want the foam to get caught, so I don't want a lot of deep little holes that are going to become plaster when I make the mold. Alright, so I have all this over here. I want to spray it down, and you'll see what I mean about smoothing it out here with the brush. I think now you guys can see a lot better the technique of some of the sculpting. I've got a brush that I've just shortened the bristles on. Hey, wife, they can see you. That's my wife. The laundry's a little bit loud, but not terrible. I am in my shop in my garage, which is a little warm. And on this camera, if my head were in the shot, you would be seeing me sweat. Normally, it's not a big deal. But this is a much better camera, so you will see all will be revealed. And again, I'm just brushing this out nice and loose. I'm not worried about blending things in perfectly. I actually like some of the pockiness of it for Frankenstein. And now I really feel ready to start paring down some of what I have in order to get a more believable shape. Just pick up all this crud, get it out of the way. Can you guys hear me on this side of the camera?
Yep.
Okay, good. This mic is less directional than my other one then.
Yeah, that's a plus.
Okay. But you guys can see that I'm really toning down this brow.
Mm-hmm.
I'm taking a lot out of it. It still has enough weight to do what I need it to do artistically. But I also have to think about how much foam that's going to be and how hard it'll be for the actor to emote and move through it. Okay, let's flip you over here now. I'm going to tone down both cheekbones. You'll see one, it's a fast process. When I put them on, they were pretty sharp, so I'm just kind of taking the sharpness off of them so that bone protrusion is still there, but it reads a little more realistic. I'm not super known for my realistic sculpting, but I think that you need a degree of realism. Here I'm reinforcing the nasolabial fold with a little bit of clay that I will blend in with the back of a popsicle stick, or a tongue depressor, I should say. And for a while, guys, expect me to aim at the wrong camera with stuff because I'm still used to doing it the other way. I know I'm looking at my computer a lot right now. You guys can't see that, but just forgive me while I get used to this process and this way of doing things. go into a big brush because I want to, you know, broadly wet this thing down and broadly smooth it out. All my tool marks here, I want to kind of take away all these lines from scraping. I'll take those away. So I'm going to try and leave, you know, as much of the actor's face as I can, but I have to let Frankenstein's story show through. And a big part of Frankenstein's story is the wounds and the facial structure. Frankenstein is going to be one of those sculpts that's very forgiving as far as asymmetry goes. It's very forgiving as far as structure goes because he's made up of different bodies. I do intend on knocking this out pretty quick. I need to mold it tomorrow because you have to dry the mold out a little bit. So I can get it molded tomorrow and then get it dried out tomorrow. I'll be able to have a pull done of it on Thursday and Friday. Noses are pretty important. Frankenstein's nose, not as much, but noses are really important in sculpts. They're the center of the face. You know, if there's, you want the nose to be just interesting enough to balance everything, but not so interesting that the eye doesn't travel around to all the other spots that it should be going to. And that's a bit of a finesse treatment, I think. And the more noses you do, I think the better off you are. It's a pretty good head cast, so I have most of the nose of the actor to work with. I am unhappy. This shouldn't be a ridge up here. You know, the head just shouldn't swoop and then come out like a wave. So I've got to either fill this in or tone this back so it slopes a little bit, which is probably what I'll end up doing because I want to decrease the amount of foam in general. I don't want a ton of foam on this. And once again, I will do that with my wire loop tool. And it might be a mixture of both. I might add some in here and take away this top ridge. But I am hitting stone, meaning that I don't have a lot of clay up here to begin with. All this right here, that's the bust. Because the clay is actually pretty close to the color of the bust. So it's hard to tell where I've got to build up, especially once I use water, and it just kind of goes everywhere. So I'm going to brush that out, take a drink, then brush it out. So it tells me how many views I have on YouTube. I have 6 actually live viewing, and then I have 8 on YouTube. So if you're watching on YouTube, awesome. Thank you. If you're watching live, awesome. And this side here is pretty good, but over here I do need to fill in here a little bit with clay. Take a real thin sheet of clay here, pinch it out, and use it to kind of fill that hole. Anytime you put something down like that, you want to blend it in, and you blend it in by smearing the edge out. And that way it's not going to stand out in my sculpt. So, Ian, what I really want to do is I want to sculpt a prosthetic for myself for my new Genie character.
Uh-huh.
But I told myself that I would take care of you first, because that's the responsible thing to do.
I very much appreciate it. It has been some time, so it's really cool to see it actually being done.
And it is tough to sweat it out in a mask. What I like about masks, normally I prefer masks or light makeup. But in a mask, at the end of the night, when I worked year-round haunted houses, it was very important to me at the end of the night, I wanted to be done. So I could take off my mask, and then I can go to IHOP, or I can go do whatever. And my haunt night didn't carry on. I see actors come into our show still wearing makeup from the night before. We use alcohol-based makeup, so it's a little bit tough to get off. But that does taint that whole day, that next day. So.
Yeah, but since I'm already scrubbing so much makeup off my hands and arms,
Yeah,
I'm already in that boat. I might as well go in all the way.
Might as well commit. There are two beings involved in breakfast. There is the chicken and the pig. The pig is committed. The chicken is involved, because the chicken just gave an egg, but the pig died to make bacon. So Ian is already a pig in the breakfast of haunted housery.
I do what I can.
And I don't know if that made any sense to anybody, but sometimes I just talk to myself. And you all just have to listen. I guess you don't, because I'm already back down to 6 viewers on YouTube. Sorry, guys. They're plummeting the more I speak. Okay. Trying to patch in the head so it's full enough. I think that's important. I'm going to use a popsicle stick to level off the top of this head. Now we're going to put some hair on it so that it'll just blend right in with Ian's hair. Some will be matted down and come down this way, and others will just go back here. And the hair will be a nice blend. Any prosthetic that you can do a good blend on with hair, hair's a great way to hide an edge. Beards are good for that. Okay.
So will the hair be something else we add onto it afterwards, or is that going into the sculpt?
It's going to be added on afterwards.
All right, I thought that'd be a challenge.
Yeah, so each one of these that we do, we also have to do a little bit of hair work on. Not a big deal. It's not a lot of hair work. And we can pre-paint them and pre-do the hair, so they'll actually go on pretty quick.
Mm-hmm.
So here is a smoother, more even Frankenstein start. So now I can really start sculpting him. You know, I have my forms down. I think I need to pare down the cheekbones a little bit. They're a little bit heavy. I actually like this area in here where all those little pieces were joined together. It just gives a nice, almost a pocky texture, which when I get to skin textures, I'll take advantage of.
And this new webcam is much better. I can see a lot of the little lines in there you couldn't before.
Oh yeah, yeah. This is this is an HD webcam. It ain't the cheapest one around, but I figure I'll do a lot of these, and it's nice to have you guys be able to see stuff. I like to pretend that any thumbs down I get on my sculpting videos are not for my sculpting or my charming personality, but for the quality of the webcam. But now I'll probably end up having to own up to, hey, it's me that they're thumbs downing, because I got a pretty sweet webcam.
All right, Lurg123 on YouTube asks, have you ever started with a block of clay and used a drill or other mechanical tool to shave away the clay?
A drill or a mechanical tool of that nature would probably be a bit too much. This steel-bladed ring here is a great tool for taking away big pieces. When you're doing big sculpts, this is something that I use all the time. And they have them where they're serrated, but no, it's pretty rare I need to use a drill or anything like that. This is real soft clay. I'm not using much force at all when I squeeze this stuff, and it just does what I want. I'm getting some weird noises. Tanya has muted herself. She's awesome, and thank you. Okay, so this wire loop tool is a much smaller one, and it's actually made from twisted wire. So it's one that I twisted wires together. It's actually an old Bic pen or whatever that I made a loop tool out of. And I just carved in some eye bags, so to make them a little more realistic, I'm pulling off of them the bottom piece so that they're not carved in as much as just there. It's pretty rare that someone is described as having chiseled features, and if you just let your tool mark show, that's a real chiseled look, and we kind of want to avoid that. I think this is the third time I've now sculpted Frankenstein. I do very much like the character. I think he is definitely a horror classic. It is one of the first stories where man made the monster. If you think about the Joker is really Frankenstein, because Batman made the Joker in some mythologies, so really he's made in order to be the nemesis for Batman. Frankenstein, this big hulking brute, is made to be the nemesis for the Doctor, who is Brains. Think about the Incredible Hulk. He was made by gamma radiation. He is this hulking brute. And he also happens to be green. I don't know that whoever invented the Incredible Hulk, and I should know that, he's one of my favorite characters. When I was a kid, I loved the Incredible Hulk so much that when my mom heard the Incredible Hulk was going to make an appearance at Toys R Us, she took me to see him because I was 3, and I cried like a baby because it was a giant green monster thing. Now, granted, it did not look like the Incredible Hulk because they made their costume out of AstroTurf, because I have pictures of it now, like looking back. It was a terrible costume. And knowing my current career, I was probably crying for how bad the costume was, not out of any fear. Just saying. But that was a pretty bad costume.
Poor Alan.
What? That's how I comfort myself anyway. I'm adding some textures to the face. I don't know that I'm going to like this. I know I am going to tone it down quite a bit. I don't want him to look chubby, and I think I might have beaten the cadaverous look that I wanted. But I did want to try them. I don't like them. But instead of just ripping them off, I am going to pare them down and pare them down so that just the concept, just a feeling or a hint of them remains. And I'll show you the sculpt actually looking kind of terrible right now. See those giant weirdo stripes I just did? I'm going to tone them down so that, you know, kind of the concept remains, but it's not distracting to the sculpt as a whole. I don't mind those at all, but they do have to blend in well. My sculpt is pretty wet now, so that means things get stickier. A little harder to do when it's wet, but I want to be able to blend on the fly, which is one of the reasons why I can't finish a sculpture quickly. I don't have to do all my additions and then blend. And if I need to, I can always dry this up a bit with baby powder. Okay. I gotta get like a head mount for this. If I could mount it right here, that might be good. Or would you guys get seasick? You'd probably get seasick. And I still want Frankenstein to be angry. I don't want to sculpt a sympathetic Frankenstein right now. I want to sculpt an angry Frankenstein because this is for a haunted house. This is directly for a haunted house. I'm not going for a sculpture. I'm not going to make a bust. This is a Frankenstein. This is a monster. He's going to be running after people and chasing them. So I don't want him to have this super serene expression, and I don't want there to be no expression in this. If I sculpted him very static, then the actor would constantly have to do work to make him look scary. But he'll feel makeup on his face. So he will feel like the work is being done by the makeup, when in reality, it's not. So you get this bored-looking Frankenstein running around if you are not careful. Okay, what I just did here to blend this down looks one heck of a lot better. I'm going to go back to the big brush because I want to do a lot of blending.
All right, I am now looking at the chat questions. Sorry I didn't go into those earlier. Kate asks, is Frankenstein always green or gray, or does he have a monster palette?
The classic Frankenstein was kind of a gray, but when they colorized all of the pictures and movie posters, they made him green so it would pop nicely and go with, you know, the yellow background and stuff. And so green is kind of the classic color for Frankenstein. But most modern Frankensteins are fleshy and purpley. They tend to stick with cadaver colors, which I think works well. But in my mind, Frankenstein's kind of green. And that's from, I think, the green tint on the screen in the black and white movies. It's from just what you see and observe in art. And now Frankenstein is in cartoons. He is so saturated as being the green monster. That's what he normally is, and that's his most famous color palette. Like even Frankenstein, I have to break up this brow with some anger. That'll also get me on a road to where I can add in some forehead wrinkles. Because I kind of desperately have to add some girth up in here, because I'm right on top of the bust, and I need to add a little bit. So I'm going to roll some cigars out, basically, and do some forehead wrinkles up there. That'll give me some thickness. And again, I'm going to put these on. They're going to look ridiculous. And then I will tone them down and calm them down in order to have them be a believable part of his anatomy. If I can't get people to believe what I am sculpting, then I have failed. I can only teach people so much in one sculpt. And when I say teach people, I'm teaching you that this is a cadaver. I am teaching you that he has this brain case that is vastly differently shaped than most people's. I am teaching that he is undead and yet still alive and very animated. And I have to teach that with clay. So if I have to teach all of that, and that his anatomy is so different from anything you're used to, I'm going to fail. Because your brain is only going to do so much work in looking at this sculpture. I really have to, if you're building a set, same is true in set dressing as it is in makeup. If you're building a set and you have to do a police interrogation room, you better have a big old mirror on one wall, and you'd better have, the chair and the metal table, or else you're not in a police interrogation room. That's what the public is. Now, you can do that and have it be a wizard's interrogation room and have all that within a circle or whatever, a magic circle or something, but you have to at least have those basics in order for people to believe it, because you can only teach them so much. I think that's why superhero movies are so much simpler than comic books, because they have to teach a lot. By the time you get to the third movie or so, all those characters are established and you don't have to worry too much about that stuff. Which I guess it should make third and fourth superhero movies better than first and second superhero movies, but I don't think that's the case either. I was just looking at that, and I really don't like that, so I'm not going to do it. But I will add just little pieces right here to reinforce the eye socket. Kind of bring that eye socket up. The cheekbone, this is connected to the cheekbone, so it's going to go, around. Once again, I put it on. I want to blend those edges. And while that does take a lot of it away, it makes it a lot more believable once I brush it out. I need the hint of what I put on there. I don't need all of what I put on there, but I got a hint at it. Okay, so this Frankenstein right now doesn't look tough enough to me. I got to figure out some stuff to make him look tougher. So maybe he's been in fights. If he has been in fights, then he has some scars. Scars are a great way to make something look tougher. And when in The Lion King, the character named Scar, he's a survivor. His name is Scar. He has built up because he's had trials and tribulations. And while Simba's dad was tough looking, he didn't have scars. He didn't look as tested. You gotta get beat up a few times, I think, to be tough. It's not about winning, it's about losing and continuing to want to fight. You have to show that this creature has fought and lost, and he still will get up and keep fighting. Frankenstein keeps getting up. If you don't have any scars, you haven't been tested enough to know if you're going to get back up. But I digress, and I talk too much, not about sculpting. So, I think that's character stuff, and character stuff certainly pertains to sculpting. All right, I have a little bit. This nodule here, I think I need to take off. It's hurting my jawline. I'm going to calm this jaw down a little bit. It's a little pointy. Same on the other side. I don't think you guys need to get C6, so I'll leave you where you're at. A lot of sculpting is taking away what you just did, because you're too heavy-handed. You know, sculpting is kind of like a conversation with someone you don't like. You want to say, "Screw you! I hate your face," but that's too strong. So you have to, in your mind, calm it down before you say it. Except in sculpting, you put down, "Screw you! I hate your face," and you calm it down to, "Right now, it's not a good time for us to talk." You calm it down to, you know, I think we have other stuff going on. I think I shouldn't talk to you right now. I'm upset. But you put on strong emotions, and you gotta pare it down a little bit. And sometimes you take away too much, and you gotta put it back. The beauty is we're playing with mud. This is mud. I'm making mud pies. I'm not going to be emotionally invested in my mud pies because they're just here to help me tell a story. And I'm trying this great big dip now right by the eyes. I think that did make me look a lot tougher. It's difference between this and this. You know, that's a little bit of a mean brow. And this is a neutral brow, surprise brow. No one's afraid of this guy, you know. As long as the mouth is calm, you know, you smile, you know, get a little creepy. But so here's where we're at now. I can tell he's getting a little bit meaner looking. I got to calm this down a little bit more even. And I might even pull something in here to connect those two in a tendon-like manner. I'm going to make a little note with clay. When I say make a note, it means I'm not going to take the time to sculpt that out right now, but I am going to put a piece of clay there so I remember what my idea is. Just enough clay to illustrate that concept. And when I later get on to more detail, I'll be able to fill that in. Yeah, and I think that's going to do a lot. And the more I work on this, I'm just adding clay and adding clay and adding clay, which is really adding foam. So I have to be careful. I don't want to add too much foam. Once again, I'm working that eye socket. If I can work that eye socket and make that eye socket appear and make that eye socket noticeable, then I'm selling cadaver. And you have to sell cadaver in order to have an effective Frankenstein. It has to look like dead things animated. That's kind of the wrongness of Frankenstein. You know, the same wrongness you should get from zombies. That thing should be dead. I can tell by looking at it. It ought to be dead. But it's not dead. Okay, so now this note that I put on, I'm going to calm down a little bit more and blend it in with the face, but it's giving me a direction, which is nice. That's kind of telling me to pare this guy down a little bit more. And get some water on it. And I don't want perfect skin on Frankenstein. I'm not going for gore. He's not a gory zombie. He is an animated corpse that has his crap together. Frankenstein's the kind of monster who'd pay his own way through college. I like that about him. Pushing back my nasolabial fold a little bit. It was encroaching the mouth area, so when the upper lip goes up, it would have started to lift the prosthetic, which we don't want. I have to worry about the mechanics of the foam and the mechanics of the face. You should be thinking about a lot of things while you are sculpting. Traditional Frankenstein has a heavy scar down one side of his forehead, and I like that. That is a super heavy scar. I'm going to leave it pretty heavy. I kind of want it noticed. But you do have to flesh it out a little bit. Now it's going to take paint well. That'll be nice. I'm going to do another scar over here around his eye. Gonna see that scar, and I calm it down by painting it with that watery brush. I think the end of the nose is a bit much. I'll really start shaping that nose now. I do want a bit of a Polish nose on him. I want a boxer's nose. I don't want something that is long and pointy. I don't think that Frankenstein has pointy parts. I think that Frankenstein is very, very square. So I want his nose to be square. I'm adding a piece underneath just to affect the front-on view. That helped me. And I'm going to add like a boxer's arch right here to where that nose has been broken a few times. And this time I'm trying to just use water on it because I don't want to have to blend it out so much. And that water picks up the clay and really makes a slurry. And that is filling in all those gaps and cracks. I think I've been sculpting this for about an hour. I actually feel pretty good about the sculpt. I know I could clean it up in a short amount of time and it would be a usable piece. I am going to keep working on it a little bit. I'm not hurting for time as long as I go to sleep by about midnight or so. And that means tomorrow I can sculpt my genie.
Woohoo! Julia Sanchez asks, do you sculpt the witch masks too?
I have sculpted some of the witch prosthetics. Crystal works in our shop. She's helped with makeup some, but she works in the mold room, and she does a lot of the sculpting because I just don't have time. For the head witch for this year, Crystal's a big Jim Henson fan. And for our head witch this year, which is, her name is Simone Noir, she has a sister named Annabelle. So Crystal and I kind of both sculpted a witch, and we said, okay, the one we like better is going to be Simone, and the one we don't like quite as much is going to be Annabelle. Well, I sculpted Annabelle, and she ended up sculpting Simone, and the tiebreaker was the music that we had. Well, the audio that we used for our commercial was kind of a fairy tale, so it was very whimsical. So her Henson-esque style made it go better with the audio track that we have in our commercial, which is the Witchery Flickery Flock, tick-tock on the dark hour clock. You guys might have heard that or something if you're nearby on TV or the radio. And we posted it, of course, to our YouTube page. I'm looking for just a little tool now with a ball on the end of it. And I may not have one here. The ball stylus is what I'd love to have. I don't have a ball stylus, so I will do something else. But I'm going to do pores. I'm going to do some pores on some parts of the face. And this one will definitely give directional pores. This is actually not a sculpting. Well, it is a sculpting tool because I'm using it as one. But when you buy a nutcracker, this is the pick that you get to pry apart walnuts. But I use them all the time for sculpting tools. Also, pretty often, if I'm doing anything medical, you know, and I'm doing a medical scene or set, I'll buy a couple of those nutcracker sets because they are pointy silver tools. They feel a little medical. Now, I just did some very subtle pokey bits. They're not terribly subtle, but by the time I touch them with this brush, they're going to really soften up. I'm just going to kind of stab them. I don't want them to go away, but I want them to soften. I don't want them as heavy as they are right now. I think a big part of the classic Frankenstein, he does this sneer. And that sneer, you're able to sculpt into a mask. But if you sculpt it into a prosthetic, it'll make that prosthetic lift up, you know, where you attach it to the mouth. So I'm not able to do that. Yeah, we have a lot of prosthetics at Dark Hour Haunted House. I don't get to sculpt all of them, but I do get to sculpt some of them. I'm pretty busy. I like sculpting, and I think that Crystal's probably a better sculptor than me. I'm faster, but and so if we don't have a lot of time, I'll get in there and I'll knock it out. But if we have plenty of time, better let her do it because she's better than me. And we actually work pretty well together with her sculpting something, and then me saying you have to do this, this, and this to make it scarier, and you know, because that's not, you know, scary isn't her go-to right off the bat, and it is mine. Often scary is in angles and triangles, and it's in just the way your eye moves around a piece, and it moves differently around a piece if that piece is round. You know, you just don't get that same feeling of dread or power or menace from it. And let's put these wrinkles in. You don't want to cut your wrinkles through where the bone is. So if your skin is showing that there's bone under here, that's an eyebrow ridge. You can't cut through that, or else your wrinkle goes through your bone, and that's kind of weird. So you have to leave it up on top of the bone. But it'll sell that wrinkle. And I can't sell the wrinkle and ignore the bone. So he's getting there. He is coming along. I think he looks mean enough now. I think he looks just about Frankenstein enough now. There's no ears on him. That seems weird. There's no hair on him. That seems weird. But he is coming along. I'm going to do some skin texture on him. So I'm looking for just a good little tool. One of my wire loops. Here's a good little loop tool. And I'm using this just to do some simple lines. And I don't want them to go away. I need to soften them. They're going to add a lot more drama to the skin than anything smooth would.
Kate Ryer asks, what will you do for the eyes, Alan? Are they already all in place?
Well, as it's a prosthetic, the actor's eyes will fill in the eyes. And it is not my, the eyes are out of my jurisdiction. This is a case where the actor, their eyes make that look. Now, contacts could happen, but in a haunt setting, I don't think that you normally need them. It's pretty rare that I think you need contacts in a haunted house. Inside, outside, yes, absolutely. And I'm going to add some. I do a genie character now. I'm going to add some to him.
So Kate Ryer says, so the holes are there already.
Yes. If you look right here, that is plaster. That is the actor's eye. Kate Ryer has a season pass to Dark Hour, so if you show up this weekend, take a peek at Frankenstein. He'll be wearing a prosthetic you might recognize.
Right. There seems to be a general "oh" amongst the audience. As in a, aha, now I understand.
Yes. Yeah, everywhere that is clay right now is going to be replaced by foam. I'll make a mold here, and the mold that I make is going to be out of stone, and the clay will be in between the stone of the bust and the stone of the mold. So then I will take off the mold of the sculpt. I'll spray the clay out with water because it's water-based clay, and then once I have cleaned out all the clay, and you see that stage on Face Off a little bit, it's kind of a point of drama. Once I clean the clay out, then I can dry the mold because moisture will ruin foam, but then I can do foam in the mold that replaces where all the clay was.
Jason Ginnard or Ginnard asks, are you going to make the traditional staples / stitches over the scar or something original?
I think I'm going to do a couple metal bands that go across it. Because normally Frankenstein has two big staples, like one's right here and one's right here. And I'm going to do the same two, but I'm going to do them across this way. And I might do Monster Squad electrodes on him. Frankenstein's electrodes were up on his neck, and in Monster Squad they moved them to the temples of his head, and I really love that movie. That might be my homage to Monster Squad.
I'm looking up Monster Squad Frankenstein right now to see what it looks like.
It was actually very light prosthetics on him, but I think
Wow.
it looked very good.
That is a very different look.
Yeah. And you know what? I might try it, and then I might not like it, but at least I'll try it. So right now I'm doing all these different nicks and lines, and they kind of look terrible. But when I brush it out, it'll look, they'll smooth out and they'll become wrinkles. So grab my brush now, get some water on it. And all that harshness just mellows out. And I'm going to get a much more dramatic skin than if it were smooth. If the eye has to move slowly around the face in order to comprehend it, then the actor gets more focus, meaning he gets a better chance to scare the customer. If they bounce right off of his face, then there isn't a lot of chance for interaction from the actor because their eye is moving around to other things in the room. And the more little wrinkles and lines and such I can put in here, the more interest I'm giving the actor. It looks a little bit like Marv from Sin City. So, okay. And right now I'm taking a chance and I'm looking at the prosthetic. I'm looking at it. I'm looking at it. I am figuring out what I like, what I don't like. Right now my fat hand is stopping you guys from seeing what I'm doing. I'm trying to make my little electrodes. And once I get them both formed the way that I want, I will then stick them on. And they are long. You need to be really subtle with this kind of a detail, and I was pretty overboard. So what I made to be each an electrode, I'm taking one now and cutting it in half. It's nice. I can kind of peek out of the hair, and now I can do just a real small ribbon of flesh around it, like it's really been embedded in there for a while. And I will mellow the area up against. Finding your sculpting tools is important. That's, of course, why I lay mine out in a giant pile on my table and don't put them in organized trays. I do think I would lose a little something, though, if every tool I wanted was right where I asked, where I reached for it. Because if that were the case, then I would always find the tool that I was thinking of. And sometimes magic happens when I don't find the tool that I'm thinking of. When I see a different tool, and that gives me an idea to do something else. So I think even if I had the option to lay them all out in their own drawer and I could get exactly what I wanted when I wanted it, probably still wouldn't do it that way because it eliminates some of the random. And some of that random can lead you to some good design choices and decisions. So this is going to be a prosthetic. We have 11 viewers now on YouTube, which is pretty good for pretty much no announcement of this whatsoever. And I appreciate you guys watching as live as possible. And then, of course, I have some folks who are live with me, and thank you guys. And I don't mind you guys popping on and asking questions. Those of you guys who are live with me, I don't mind you guys turning your mic on as long as you know, the noise isn't interfering. But yeah, so those are the electrodes, and they look a little bit heavy right now, but they're going to be calmed down quite a bit. And I can also just nip them off in the mold when if I don't like them. You know, because they're going to stick out, and they're going to be foam. So I'll just take them off if I need to. But right now, they can stay. Clean that one up a little bit. It wasn't quite as round and metally looking as I like. All right, let me do those two staples here. When you are sculpting metal things, you want to use metal tools. If you're sculpting something organic like flesh, I like to use non-metal tools. That's why you saw me break out those little metal pieces when I was working on the electrodes. And now you can, of course, use metal tools for organic lines and wrinkles. Wire loop tools are certainly metal, but they are also a little more, I guess they're bendy, so that makes them a little more flexible, I guess. And right now I'm making a little bed for this staple to lay in. And I don't want clay underneath of it in that scar. I mean, I do want clay underneath of it in that scar because if plaster goes under there, it'll rip out of the mold every time. Now that has its own little bed. And I can just clean that up. And I will use this wire loop to calm down this side. And then I'll use a different metal tool to smooth out that staple. I'm going to do one more of those staples. Just to really make it look like they're trying to hold this scar together. I would think with all the tissue swelling, bone won't swell or expand, but tissue certainly will. I would think that they need something like expansion joints on Frankenstein, like sidewalks have, to keep him from cracking. I might be thinking too much about it. I'm just using my fingers to form a nice little rectangle so that I can pop this staple into place. You want to have it interact with the area around it. It needs to, swell up a little bit. It needs to look like it goes inside of there. That is something that you want to happen. There's going to be some irritation around it, a little swelling. That's nice. So I have to calm down the flesh with a brush. All those sharp edges, get those off. And then go in with my wet metal tool and kind of polish this staple. Alright, so now I've got 2 staples in a wound. I've got my electrodes. I think the nose, this arch is too pronounced. So I'm going to calm it down. Ian, you have any thoughts?
Well, I'm really enjoying it. It's very different from the one you'd had before, so it's interesting to see a new take on it. One of the most distracting things for it is having to use my actual lips for it, because I don't have Boris Karloff's thin, invisible lips.
Right.
So there's
what happens was that kind of sends my design a little bit of a different direction. So this is kind of like a Thuggenstein. He's a little thuggier looking. He's solid, he's thick.
which, at least knowing the rest of the costume, works well enough.
Yeah. Yeah, we have he is a bit of a 40s gangster dressed Frankenstein.
The sculpt seems to remind Jason of the Creeper from Jeepers Creepers just a little.
I can see that because of texture, a heavy texture, especially on the cheeks. This area is similar, and even the hook of the nose is a little bit reminiscent of it. I can see that, and it does not offend me.
I can assure you, though, that I won't be wearing the goofy hat.
Right. I don't think Frankensteins should wear hats. Okay. Just gave the chin some texture just by, carving it up a bit. Getting my tool marks out of it. Yeah, and I think giving any fuller lips would cause problems for him. We certainly don't want an Angelina Jolie Frankenstein.
That could be more scary, though.
Yeah, well, we're not going for Frankenfurter. And I'm bringing the edge now of the sculpt. I'm just carving it down to where a little more of your lip is exposed, so that as the mouth opens and as this lip emotes, it's not peeling the prosthetic away.
Hmm.
Yeah, but he is kind of a Thuggenstein. I like it though.
I like the electrodes actually. I know you might be paring them down, but I think they're kind of a nice touch.
Yeah, they're a little Frankie. I mean, you see electrodes on the head or on the neck, and you know it's Frankenstein. That's nice.
Hmm.
And there will be hair up here along the top that kind of comes down just a little bit, and then can blend back in with the head. I still have a bit of a wave up here, so I'm going to fill that in a little bit. I'm not going to turn these cigar shapes into wrinkles. I'm just using them to beef it up and to stock it up. I'm very concerned with profile. It's actually really nice sculpting it this way because I can look at it head on while I'm seeing the profile in the computer. So I know if what I'm doing on one side is fixing or messing up the other. All right, back to my twisted wire loop to calm these down a little. And this time I'm not going to pick up all this debris. I'm going to let it be here. It's going to help fill in those low spots too. Just moving the clay around from one spot to another. Okay. Go back to my short brush because I really need to blend right now. I just put a lot of new clay on here, and I got a lot of detail in other areas, so I need to get this blended out some. And now the square of the head is actually below the top of the head. The top of the head is here, but this character is on stilts, so he's going to be above almost everyone. So they're going to look up and see that head square off. I don't want a super long head on my Frankenstein. I don't want it to be the Kid and Play monster, you know. That was a rap group from the 90s. One had really tall hair. Okay. So brushing this out. And I'm not super worried about the detail way up high here because, once again, hair is going to go on there. Now I'm going to do something weird, but along the whole sculpt's edge, I'm going to trace it so it's thick. Like the edge of that is nice and thick right now. So I can spray it down, and that thick edge will not dry out near as fast as a thin edge would. And right before I mold it, I can just take my finger and mush that down so I've got nice thin edges. That's a water-based clay trick that is kind of necessary. I'm just putting on some little clay pieces here to add a little bit of drama to this guy in that area. I felt that that spot was too smooth on both sides. But if I just do a little change here, little bit, that makes it a little more asymmetrical. Maybe that's some kind of a disease or rot, or there were stitches or staples there. Now that's healed. I actually kind of like that texture a lot, so I'm going to do a little bit of that up here on this cheek. Carry it towards the eye. And I'm kind of running the balance of holding the camera with one hand and sculpting with the other, so I apologize for the view. But hey, it's a better camera than it used to be.
Jason asks, are you going to show casting and making a pull for this sculpt?
It's possible. I know I will do it in the future. I don't necessarily have plans for this sculpt, but I will be doing some of that in the future.
And then Ian has a question. I remember now in the mask, looking back at some pictures, that a very strong angry expression was put in with a big scar running up almost the middle of the brow ridge. Do you think doing a similar sort of effect would benefit this sculpt, or would you rather leave it as is?
You know what? It's I can never lose sight of the fact that I'm playing with mud. I can always throw that in there and then take it out if I need to. So let me find an appropriate big old scar-making tool.
I'm just throwing out suggestions and seeing what
The
sticks.
popsicle stick. So what I really just did was I redid those brows right there, and I will calm that down. I don't think it hurts it.
All right.
Twisted wire here. This one I want to leave a little more scar-like, but this one I do want to feather out a bit. Okay, so I'm going to get up and look at it from a little further away. That might tell me something. I'll bring you guys with me.
That looks pretty awesome.
Yeah, I think that's a decent Frankenstein. Big old fan brush, very soft. I'm going to tone down some of the wrinkles, and just so that this skin is a little more skin-like. It's one piece of skin. There's so much detail in this that there's by no means am I going to make it smooth, but I do want it to read as one piece and not like a bunch of blobs of clay that are just wadded on.
Jason likes the electrode to look better on the temples than usually on the neck.
Yeah, the neck always looks a little forced, and I think the neck also limits the actor a little bit as far as mobility goes.
Mm-hmm.
Because it's water-based clay, I'm actually getting a texture by stabbing it with the brush. You wouldn't get that in oil-based clay. And it's a very light texture, but you can see that that eye bag has a lot of texture where the skin under it does not. So I'm calling Frankenstein done.
Woohoo!
Prosthetic, and I will mold him tomorrow.
Kate says, "Look at all that high definition. Thank you for the new camera."
You are quite welcome. So that is that as far as the sculpt goes. I'm going to, of course, I have to mold him tomorrow. I got to mold him in stone. Once he's molded, then I will need to. Once I mold him, I'll need to, take the mold apart, spray it out, clean it, and then run foam in it. And I'm kind of excited to see how the piece turns out. I shouldn't have to do any blending really around the eyes because there's definite eye sockets where everything fits in. So I don't have to glue that down per se. As long as I glue down along the cheekbones, it should be good. Now, I'm always one for messing with stuff. I can't guarantee I won't pick at this later, but I do feel confident that it's a finished sculpt. I just wanted to see what plastic laid on it did, and it does a little, but I don't necessarily like it. And now this clay is very wet, so it's going to take just the subtlest of detail from stuff. Okay, guys, this is Frankenstein. I'm calling him done, and thank you guys very much for watching. One thing I will make sure that I do is I will take a picture of him, and I'll post him on my Facebook and Haunter's Hangout once he is all made up and scaring people.
Awesome.
Thank you guys for watching. I'm going to stop the broadcast, and next time I have no idea what I'll be sculpting, but I'm sure I'll have fun.
Awesome. Night.